Hi, it's Lucy here, and today I'm going to make 2 cards using this paper collection and lots of tips and tricks for fussy cutting. Firstly, it's so important what scissors you use. I used to swear by my Fiskars scissors for all cutting. I loved the length of them, and I found that they cut very easily, slicing through most things. I also have this other pair that are specific for fussy cutting, but I never found them comfortable. And they're supposed to be able to get into really intricate little parts, but I found that once Uniquely Creative bought these fussy cutting scissors out last year, they're a game changer. I wasn't sure if I'd use them as I thought I was happy with my long white pair, but well, I've got to say, they've turned me into a crazy fussy cutter. I do now love it, and I do it so often. They have a really sharp tip, so getting into really small areas is so easy, and they're perfect for right and left-handers as they're the same both ways around, which I just think is so good. I'm not trying to sell them to you all. I will have a link, of course, but I just want you to know that if you're looking for a great pair of scissors for fussy cutting, these are amazing. I've read up on them and they say they're stainless steel, which is why they stay so sharp as well. But if you've got a pair that you love, then that's great too. I have this lovely sheet of paper with so many items to fussy cut, and I've already cut up the same sheet once and popped it in this box so that it's nice and easy for me to play around with embellishments. This one, I have actually cut these leaves already, and now if they're flat, they look nice, but if you can use any sort of little tubular straw, or this is a lollipop stick, and I've just found out from Beverly today, one of my other subscribers, she let me know that you can find them on Amazon as cake pop sticks if you're interested in something like this. And I just use it to curl up the leaves on the sides, on the tips, and just to give them a little bit of life. And I always find that with the florals and the leaves, it just looks so nice. So it makes a big difference. You can see there with the borders and not. I would tend to use the borders only when I'm going to use white backgrounds or paper that's predominantly white. I find that if you're going to use a patterned paper or a designer paper behind as a background that doesn't have a lot of white, it really stands out. And yes, I don't recommend it. So I'm using my scissors here and I'm just being really careful to cut around it, but I'm not being too careful. I find that it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be perfect and exact. You can cut off little pieces of the leaf and no one will know. As long as they still look in a leafy sort of design, it's fine. And I've cut it separately here. You can cut them as much as you like separately. And here I'm going to cut them just in between a little bit so that they can bend better. You can use this bending technique on any of your fussy cut items as well. Say you had a jumper or something like that, you can actually bend the sleeves. It'll make it look like it's an actual item and not just paper. Fussy cutting is a really cheap way to get the most out of your stash as well, because most of it is always just paper or cardboard items, and yet you can create cards with just using these items. So this one I'll cut a thin white border around it and then I'll bend it, but you'll see that it just doesn't have that same realistic look because it's given it more of a sticker style. So I really, with all of my fussy cutting, generally I will never have a border. I just like how it looks when it's more realistic without. So I'll do the same technique and with the bending, but it just doesn't come out quite as nice. As I mentioned before, if you have a nice white fresh background or a pattern paper with lots of white, It can still look really good because it doesn't stand out quite the same, and it can still give it that nice fresh card look. And now I'll cut out another set of the same leaves, and this time I'm going to ink them before I bend them, and this makes a huge difference as well. They look absolutely gorgeous, so we'll see how we go here. Now while I'm cutting these, it's good to notice that I'm actually moving the paper probably more so than the scissors. This does tend to give you a little bit more stability when cutting, but it is a personal preference, and quite often I will actually move the scissors instead of the paper as well, even though a lot of people recommend the other way. So it's just it comes down to a personal preference on what's easier for you. There's no right and wrong. I think it's supposed to protect your hands as well if you move the paper more so than the scissors, so for long time cutting. So now on to the inking, and I'm just using a little brush and some vintage photo distress oxide ink, and I'm just lightly going around the edges at this stage. I just want to put a little bit of extra colour on them, give them a little bit extra shading. Also where you cut them, you'll have a white border, and so it's always good as well if we can get rid of this white border. So I'll bring out one of my domed brushes as well so that I can really get on the sides of the leaves. That way then that takes all of that away and they'll look a lot more natural. If the images have a black outline, which a lot of them do, when you cut around them, if you do accidentally cut some of the black outline off, it's okay, because if you have a black marker, like a Sharpie or something, you can very carefully go around it. I've shown that in one of my videos before, where I'll pop it down onto some paper and go around it that way. I find that gives it the best stability to make sure that I don't accidentally put black ink onto the image itself. And so here's the difference after inking it and the ones that are just fussy cut, and then the one with the white border, and you can see the difference clearly. And would you agree with me that the one that's been inked and fussy cut very close to the edges looks the best? And the bends make it really realistic. They look so good. And then with this flower, it's a very light colour, so it's quite hard to distinguish the difference between the white paper and some of the petals. But it doesn't matter. It means that everybody else's eye will be the same. And as long as it is in fussy cut into a shape of a flower, you won't be able to see how great a job that you've done. I'm actually going to cut between each petal up to the center of the flower. And what happens here is that means that I'll be able to bend it better than if I was just cutting around the outside border. So each time I will just go back and then cut into the center. That way when I use my lollipop stick, you can bend each petal separately. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. This looks so much better than keeping it all as one, because it can all be bent. I just wanted to mention as well that the tips of these scissors have a diamond tip, and so this makes it really beautiful for cutting. When you snip something, it doesn't actually cause a tear at the end, which some scissors do when they have a blunt tip. So here I am just bending each one individually. I'm bending them around it with the sides of the petals all going under, and this gives it a really nice shape for the flower. I'm creating this video today because one of my subscribers, hi Lorna, asked me for some advice on this topic. So I decided to answer all her questions in this video, and I'm not speeding things up. I will tend to, edit things that aren't necessary, but most of the time, just so that you can see exactly what I'm doing in slow motion or normal motion. This will hopefully help new fussy cutters, and also anyone that's looking for some tips here with fussy cutting. I cut everything, even the parts that are on the side of these type of papers where maybe there's only half a flower. It doesn't matter, because if you're going to be tucking them under some other embellishment, or you can glue them to the side of the cards, you really don't need a full flower or leaf set. So use everything. With this one, it's a little bit trickier. It has some tiny little green stem leaves there. So let's see how we go with that. I tend to go very close around the bulbs of those green parts, but the stems I will leave a tiny little bit of white just to give them some more stability. They can't be protected on their own otherwise, because they're so thin. But if we ink with a little bit of green afterwards as well, they won't stand out as much and you won't notice them. I know these really skinny pieces look like they're a lot of extra work, but you do get the hang of this fairly easily, and it definitely makes it worth it. Once you see the card at the end, you'll notice those tiny little leaves on it, and it just gives a little extra special detail. I'd also love to know if you are a fussy cutter, or if this has given you some assistance with it. I do have a scan and cut, which, I could use that, but I tend to find that fussy cutting is actually faster than using that. By the time it's tried to figure out all of these shapes, if they don't have a black outline, it's very hard, and it can tend to sometimes ruin some of the images if I'm not careful in checking it before it cuts it. So in any intricate little parts like this, sometimes I find it easier just to get out my craft knife and just do the little bits that are right in the center parts. And then I'll slightly tug on the white bits to easily have them pull away. Normally this works well. I won't tug too hard. If I feel like it's still too attached, then I'll just use my scissors or my craft knife to give it one more little snip. I'm going to use some ink. This one is Peeled Paint Distress Oxide ink, and I'm just going to lightly go over the leaves and those stems so that the white parts won't be seen so much anymore. And then I'll bend them all backwards a little bit, the tips, and this will just give a little bit more dimension to the flower. I'll also do that with some of the outside petals of this flower, and that way it won't sit quite so flat on the page. I can't wait to show you these two cards that I've made. I really like them. One of them I have made for my sister, and her birthday is next week. So yeah, I hope you like these cards too. And then I've decided to just add a little bit of the vintage photo ink to go around the outsides as well, just to give it a little bit more depth. And again, I'm just going to use my lollipop stick to bend the petals and the leaves, and to just give it some dimension. I use all of these flowers and leaves on the cards, and I just like to try to pop them into little clusters and see how I'm going whether I need other colours, whether I need more leaves or flowers. So I'll just give a quick arrangement and make sure that I feel like I have enough. Doesn't it look beautiful already? I love these flowers and leaves together. They're just so beautiful. So here's another intricate cluster that I'm going to fussy cut. And I'm just going into all of those little leaves. And again, I'll use my knife to just cut the little incisions in the middle of the leaves right at the stem. I know this looks very intricate and like you may feel like it's a little bit too much for you to try, but you've got to remember at the end of the day, it's just paper. And if you do a terrible job, it won't notice. You can still use it on a card, like try it. Don't throw it away if you've accidentally made a few mistakes on it, because you can't tell. Like with some of these green leaves that are coming up, I don't cut them perfectly off. I'll end up cutting some of the green off, you'll see here, and no one will ever know. Like our eyes just see the whole cluster together. They don't go looking for any mistakes. So anybody who's receiving one of your beautiful cards won't be looking for errors. They'll be looking at the whole card itself. So you may be a little bit more critical of yourself, but there's no need. We don't need to be perfectionists because these are handmade. And so I say just give it a try and see. I didn't think that I would be a fussy cutter, but I absolutely love it. But again, I've got to say it's because of those scissors that has really turned me into just a crazy little crafter that loves fussy cutting now, because it doesn't hurt my fingers. I used to find that I couldn't do it for too long before it started hurting. So yeah, this one is very intricate, isn't it? But see, I've just torn off a piece here to show if that happens, like if it accidentally rips or tears, you just cut it off, and then you can cut any little excess pieces off the main cluster. And I'm still going to use this tiny little leaf somewhere on my card. No one needs to know it was part of the cluster in the first place. The kit I'm actually using today is Uniquely Creative's Into the Wild kit, and I will have links to everything that I've used below in the description. But of course, I'm not using too much today, mostly the scissors, inks, the papers. It's amazing what you can create with just such a small amount of products, really. Another tip is if you do have trouble fussy cutting, you can also try cutting them with the blade on an angle so that you can see more clearly what you're doing. Are you crafting along with me? I'd love to know if you are. I have read lately with my longer videos that people enjoy crafting along with the YouTube videos, and so I love that idea. And just to let you know that the winner of the $50 Uniquely Creative prize has come forward, and so I'm on my way to the 10,000 subscribers, and hopefully I'll be able to do another voucher winner soon. So I'm using a knife to just get into these really fussy little spots, but it's not necessary. You don't have to do this. I'm just showing that you can. To make sure that I don't accidentally rip off one of these tiny little leaves as well, I'll actually press down very heavily onto the leaf to make sure that it doesn't tear with the knife. And then I can cut any other little bits off. And then doesn't it look gorgeous? Another option would be to cut all of the flowers and leaves off separately as well, and you could build those up with different foam tapes and scrap papers underneath, so they all sit at different levels. This would be a great option if you only had one cluster to work with and not a whole sheet of flowers to play with. So again, I'm just going to use my lollipop stick. It's amazing what you can do with one of these. And I'm just going to bring this to life a little bit more. I've just sped some of this up as this is using the same technique as before. I'm going to cut off that little leaf set, and I will definitely be using it. It really brings a little extra something to the card at the end. And I really wanted to have more options on where I wanted to place it. And I'm just going to show a few different ways of putting these together. I've just really quickly put this cluster together and I think it looks really lovely. But there's so many options once you fussy cut things out to change them all around. So I'll show you another really quick way. I haven't edited this. I've just it just came together perfectly. I think it's because of the way they've been cut and bent around that it just looks like a bouquet no matter which way it goes. So I've got a sentiment here which I think looks really lovely with it. And so I'm just trying to see what background paper will look nice behind it. And although I like the chevron for the next card, this first card, I really like that white one with the tree. It's like a watercolored tree. I want to show here what I'm doing is, someone asked me the other day about cutting with my knife and how they have issues with it. And I just want to show what I do normally is I lightly cut the first time round because that creates a groove in the paper. And then the next go, I'll cut again, and it's not likely to move the knife because it's in the groove already. I hope that makes sense, but I find that most of the time that's what I'll do, and especially if it's really heavy card. Trying to cut it through in one go, it doesn't matter how sharp your blade is, it can still move. And in actual fact, if you have a really sharp blade, it moves even easier off the page and where you don't want it to. So now I'm having a look with the sentiment and putting things around, and I totally change it up, but that's okay. This looks nice too, so I decided to keep it in so that you could see. I felt like it needed a few more leaves, so I'm just fussy cutting this one out. This has different leaves to what I've used on the other ones, and I won't actually fussy cut around the bottom parts of this because I'm not going to be using it. It'll go underneath the cluster, so no one will know, and so I feel like it may be a little bit of a waste of my time. If I changed my mind and decided I wanted to have the whole thing shown, I could then fussy cut it. But for now, I think that I want that long part, leafy part, to be the main bit of this cluster. Once I've finished fussy cutting that, I'll ink it lightly with the peeled paint ink and the vintage photo as well. Both of those are Distress Oxide inks. I'll have links again below. And anyway, I feel like the card looks a little bit top heavy with this arrangement. So I will start again. Seeing as it was so easy to keep trying different things with these and everything looked nice, I didn't hesitate in trying something new. When I am putting clusters together like this, I do try to even out the colours. So at the moment I do have some of the pink flowers up the top and the brown leaves and the green, and down the bottom the same. And I think that gives it a consistency throughout and just makes everything come together a lot prettier. I feel like the card needs a light frame, so I'll use one of my black fine liner pens to scribble one. These pens come in a pack of 3, each with a different nib size, which is the thickness that it comes out. I've chosen the smallest nib at 0.1, which I think might be the finest that you can get. If you don't like to scribble or you don't like that look, you can always use a ruler, which looks nice too. I thought for this card a more rustic rather than structured look would be best. I want the sentiment to stand out a little more against the background paper, so I'm going to border it. I check out what looks best and I decide on the muted green paper. I'll again add some black borders just for fun to tie it in with the other border. So then it's just time to stick everything down on this card. This is the one I've made for my sister. I was asked the other day about envelopes and posting some of my cards. I mostly only post the ones that I feel will keep safe. Either they're flatter or they have lots of even foam tape to keep their structure. If it has lots of curved fussy cutting like this, I probably wouldn't post it, although I feel it would still look nice even if it was flattened a little. If I do want to send a special delicate card, I do have boxes that I can put a card in for protection as well. I've tried making my own, but it's quite a lot of work and perhaps not worth it. One of the great things about fussy cutting is that you can keep cutting them down to fit what you need. The leaf cluster was too large together. It wouldn't fit without coming off the page, so I separated some of it. And then I can place them all where I think they look best. I've added foam tape to most of the items on this card. It gives it a bit of height. I'll add some Nuvo drops to finish this card off. I use a box to whack my card onto to smooth out the Nuvo drops into perfect circles. And then this card is finished, and what do you think? Do you think it's pretty? I love the little small elements and how they really make it look so much more delicate. So I feel like they are worth the trouble. Do you think they are? With this next card, I'm going to recycle some packaging from Uniquely Creative to create an extra layer between these two background papers. It's great for the environment and it saves me on buying foam tape, so I'll double layer it. This card is a self-explanatory one and I hope you enjoy the process, and I'll see you at the end of it. What do you think of these two cards? I think the flowers and the leaves are just so beautiful. I think they've turned out really lovely myself. So thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's given you some really good tips and ideas on fussy cutting and different ways to do things. You'll see I just used my lollipop stick to give a bend and a curl to the strings. So please give this a thumbs up if you found it helpful and you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd love that. Happy crafting, and bye for now.